Yeah. Hi there, it's Elaine Lindsay of Business Banter Plus TV, and I'm really excited today to be talking with Chris Brogan. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Elaine. Happy to be here.
Oh, it's awesome to have you here. For those who don't know, and that's probably such a small segment of the populace, Chris is the CEO and president of Human Business Works. He's a New York Times best-selling co-author of The Impact Equation and Trust Agents. And I believe Trust Agents was also made the Wall Street Journal best-selling list.
We got around a little on that Trust Agents one. It was Wall Street Journal and Amazon and Inc. and 800 CEO Read. All the
Yeah,
rest of them, not so much.
I think it was up here as well.
I think
Because
so.
Yeah. And Chris is also the sole author of Social Media 101 and Google Plus for Business. His latest book, which is very exciting, is The Freaks Shall Inherit the Earth. And that was book number 7. I just read to Chris while we were in the green room that you've written 8 books, right? He said yes, because he actually just canned a book, I understand, today. And maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about that book in a moment or so. I just wanted to sort of expand on other things that you co-founded PodCamp with Christopher Penn. You are an advisor for, let me see, oh, I've just gone blank. I looked at so many things that Chris does, and there's so many great reviews out there. Anthony Robbins, Seth Godin, Steve Pressfield, Amanda Parker, James Altucher. Everybody has phenomenal things to say about you. So why don't we start with your latest book, which may shock people a little bit, because fitness and health?
Well, sure. When you have nothing else going on, you might as well write some more books. And what had ended up happening was I am in the middle of a process of getting a little more healthy and trying to make that a much more permanent change in my life. And so many people ask me questions. How'd you do this? Or what was this? And how do I make it better? And I wrote a book. It's called Just Start Here. Jacqueline Carley, who's my better half, she helped me with it because I have no credentials. I have no purpose telling anybody what to do with their health, but she has a master's in nutrition and she's working on her PhD in psychoneuroimmunology, and she's got all kinds of training certifications and all that sort of thing. And so it's just basically this book where I wrote it just because it seemed like a good thing to do. And it's out right now, and what I do promise is this. It's not all the fitness books I've ever seen have just a whole bunch of exercises in them. All the nutrition books I've seen tell you, what to eat and what not to eat. And mine is stuffed full of mindset stuff, because what I find is that we all know what we're supposed to do. This book tells you maybe here's how we unpack and fix some of the things that we haven't been doing.
Oh, that's excellent. And you really have made a great transformation in yourself. Looking at you when you've spoken at different conventions, you do look very different. You look much fitter and much more comfortable in your body. Can I say that?
You can say that. I've got a lot further to go. I'm more than halfway through, weight-wise what I want to be. But, I mean, it's really fun, too, because I just feel like there's so many more challenges ahead, and I'd rather sort of be in a better way to take them on. So, seems fair to me.
Well, and I think that's a gift to your partner and your kids as well, because when you're healthier, that helps you to make sure that they're healthier as well.
Good. I mean, I just want to get the opportunity to be able to still chase them while they're still, the interest of running. So, seem fair.
Yeah. Yeah, and as your daughter, who's the elder of the two, as she gets into those early dating years, you do want to be able to chase those young men out of the way.
I hadn't really thought of that, but as I continue to work on my musculature, it's not going to hurt the dating problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that brings us to The Freaks Shall Inherit the Earth, and I think it's I think it's perfect. It resonated with me as soon as I saw the title, because let's face it, I'm definitely a freak. I'm not your average person, and it's good knowing that there are other freaks out there that consider it a badge of honor. So different people have said it's a book for you if you're looking to start a business, run an existing business, or for even people who work in the corporate world. But I think they treat their jobs as kind of, their own little business. They're very committed to what they do. And I think the bottom line is, if you feel you're a freak, then you need to get it. It's your handbook. That's what it says to me. So why don't we dive in? Why don't you give us a little synopsis? I know there's a big breakdown of chapters in this book that are really, to me, cover pretty much everything you could need as a handbook.
Well, the way I put it together was I was thinking, how did I do what I did, and what sort of gave me the beliefs that I could, and then also, how do I help people who maybe don't see themselves? All the other books on entrepreneurship seem to be one of two things: a young man in a hoodie in San Francisco making software, or two people in suits shaking hands at a boardroom table. And that's the only two examples I've seen of entrepreneurship. And so I decided, well, what if there's some people who in no way fit either of those molds? I bet there are. And so I really started looking to connect and find, stories like that. So I interviewed everybody from Kate White, who used to be the editor-in-chief at Cosmopolitan. I interviewed Mark Echo, who's this design professional, Tony Hawk, the skateboarder, RJ Diaz from Industry Portage, which is a fashion brand, but he was a architect and construction kind of guy and decided to make fashion. So it was fun for me because there's just a lot of stories out there. This really nice woman gave me a post that I somehow have immediately lost, but I'm going to put up on my blog. She did all the work. I'm just going to post it. And I had said something about, I don't know enough female freaks. It's not that, freak CEOs, sorry.
Yeah.
So she corrected me to the tune of like this many wonderful freak CEOs. So I was wrong, and it's just I'm not a good researcher, evidently. So she helped me.
Well, too, I don't think all the freaks are quite as ready to own it, to wear that badge, because as much as there's lots of CEOs out there who are, they're not into conventional thinking, and they're not on the same path they see others. They really do march to the beat of their own drum. But I don't think, especially for the women, women traditionally have had to fight harder to get up the ladder, so some of them may not be as ready to put it out there, that they don't really fit with the rest.
That might very well be. What turned out to be funny, I just found that actual message and all that.
Oh, cool.
What was kind of neat about it was just that, I couldn't have been any more wrong, basically. She did a great job of just finding every single human that has ever, vaguely fit that category. And what I love is that, people have come forward in lots of different ways to identify as freaks that I didn't think would be, Elaine. We both know we're freaks, but my friend Mitch Jackson, who is California's leading trial attorney, said he was one, and I didn't expect that. And Rod and Mel, who are two CPAs who talk about accounting all day, said they were freaks. And this really nice guy who's a dentist, whose name I never seem to remember, said, "Oh yeah, I'm totally a freak, absolutely." And it was mind-blowing. The people that the woman's name who put this list together, her name is Randy Reed. She mentioned people like Oprah Winfrey. She said Coco Chanel, Helena Rubinstein, Bobby Brown, right, exactly. Barbara Walters, I missed, so many great freaks. So that said, I think that it's an exciting time, because it used to be that we had to try to fit in. And as you well know, Ms. Business Banter Plus, we don't have to try to do anything we want anymore. We could just be who we want to be, and it's a good time for it.
Yeah, that's so very, very true, because I think it's the yoke of fitting in became so heavy for so many people. I think in all walks of life, and you're right, CPAs and people that you really wouldn't think. I know a forensic uh, she's a forensic anthropologist who, yeah, she's the first one to tell you she's a freak, and she doesn't do it like anybody else, but she's the best in the biz, which is
Mm-hmm.
really, really interesting. Um, what what would you say to like the newer learning to be freaks that maybe haven't started their business yet, but they know that they'd like to do something? Some of us just aren't to the cubicle enticed, or it's just, yeah, it just doesn't fit. So what would you say to them is, what's the first thing you should do if you pick up the book and you realize that this is me? What's the first thing you should do?
That's a great question about first. I guess probably the very first thing is to realize it's not enough just to be a weirdo. Like that's not the end all of being a freak. I mean, there's lots of weirdos, and I say somewhat disparagingly, and they litter the parents' basements of the world.
Yeah.
There's lots of people who haven't figured out the difference between what they're going to do for a day job and whatever. And that's not what I'm really getting at. But what I am saying is that once you decide that you're a freak, how do you do it in service of the people that you're getting a chance to relate to? How do you have the opportunity to talk to people who are how do you help others? I mean, that's the real question. So the first thought is, if I'm a freak, what makes this useful to anybody else? And then from there, I guess the next thing would be, how do I do something where I can take what I've learned or take what I know or who I am, and put it in service of what other people might need.
So that's excellent. That's a really good point. And I like that distinction. We're not talking about the quote unquote basement dwellers that aren't sure or aren't motivated enough to even ask themselves that question. They're just basically being. They're not doing. And I think a lot of people lost sight of the fact that doing service, being in service to others, that's really what business is about.
Absolutely, Elaine. That is one of the biggest tenets of the entire book is how can we help people, and what does it mean to belong, and how do we serve? And I talk about community a few different times in the book, and every time I do, I talk about it being the community that we have the pleasure to serve. It's never my community. It's a community to serve. So the people who come to Business Banter Plus TV are the people that you're serving, and it's the same sort of a scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. So starting out in the book, you're talking about business, new and old and new again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, give us a little sense of where exactly, what that came from. Like, was it your research that gave you that start to the book, or what exactly does that entail for you?
I, at this very moment, am and happen to live inside a factory building. And this factory building used to make the upholstery and whatnot that covered carriages back when carriages were cars. Cars weren't invented yet. So I'm in the center of what Detroit was before there was a Detroit. And this is now a factory building, and down the way there's a factory building full of little computer nerds building small startups in small little rooms. And so why I say business is old is new again is that in the world of the freaks, it's basically that a sort of new style of cottage industry has risen. And so we were told, get off of the farms, come to the factories, that's where the jobs are, we don't need your farms anymore. And then we were told, oh, sorry, there's no more factory jobs, come to the cubicles, it's all okay right now. And then we were told, oh, never mind, we don't need you in the cubicles either. In fact, you're just kind of fired because we don't know where to put you anymore. And so everybody kind of came back to the factories where they're now, sleeping or living or doing something else. So it's an interesting time, really, because I feel like we're at this new economy, and it's not a big company versus small company story. No. It's companies looking to have relationships versus companies just looking to push product out the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking a few weeks back with Stan Phelps, and that's exactly, he talks about the Pareto principle, because it's true. Okay, like 80% of your interaction with your customers comes from the 20% that are great customers. And I think businesses, bigger businesses, are starting to realize they need to get back to servicing those customers. It's not the new customer that you need to entice. You need to service the customers you have. And that's for companies big or small, or even startups. That's where you need to start.
One of the experiences I've been having with that is that when I say big companies, one of the favorite things I do is I just grab these sneakers that are here. Reebok, who started working with the Spartan race people to make shoes very specifically for them and for the CrossFit people. And they said, we want to serve you. How do we make these shoes better for you? So they sponsor both of those projects now, and they sponsor CrossFit games and they sponsor Spartan races. But they also say, how do we make these shoes work for you? Nike says, we've got shoes, you should buy some.
Yeah, that's a really good point between the two, between Reebok and Nike. Because, I think at some point Nike is going to have to take a stand and actually change their way of business as well. Because I think this is the bigger piece of this. The freaks, there's a lot more than people think. Okay, there's a lot of freaks out there, and a lot of really good small businesses and even large businesses that are run by freaks who really understand service and being in service. Because once you really understand it, there's nothing more rewarding. And you're Buddhist?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I say a recovering Catholic, so being in service is not it's not a religious thing. It's, for me, it's a human thing, which you obviously know a lot about, and that's what first brought me to read your books, and even before we had met,
right.
I was really interested in your human business, and as a matter of fact, in your parents' journey.
Yes.
Because it was so human, and being able to relate to people, whoever they are, however large they are in the stratosphere, when they relate on that human level, it's so much more real, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
You're right. One of the things I brought to the table when I started the companies I started was, I said, we want to show people how to make human, relationship-minded business. How do we make people understand that you can connect in a very personable way, and that let's just not do only the platitudes and things. And Freaks pushes that another layer down, and it just says you really don't have to fit in. You really could just be you. You just have to make sure that the you that you are is also somewhat useful to somebody, and then life might be really good.
Yeah, I like that. And you brought that into the companies you've started, and everybody knows me as the second most curious person on the planet, because I really like to know the why. Like, why? What led you down this path when you were a kid, or when you were a teenager? What led you, well, first of all, to Buddhism, and what led you to understanding that service is the epitome of what we can do here?
Well, I guess the first question first about Buddhism, I really just basically found that the type of Buddhism that I am into is this Shambhala Buddhism, which is a Tibetan flavor, and there really weren't a lot of rules and requirements. It was essentially, you really had to breathe a lot more, and kind of stay where you are and things. So I liked it, and it really kind of gave me a nice anchor and ground to what I wanted to get done. Interestingly, part of that work is to reduce fear and to work on your courage and all that. And I think that we use fear to say, you know, I'm afraid of sharks, or I'm afraid of the dark, or I'm afraid of spiders, or whatever. But there's so much more fear in our lives, and we're afraid that people don't take us seriously. When I reduce that fear, I can make freaks happen. I'm afraid that, you know, I'm not going to get paid because big companies pay me, and now I'm talking to smaller people and, you know, solo individuals. That's fear. So if I can embrace courage there, then I'm going to figure out the money. It's not a big problem. The more we can trust that courage and our efforts will get us somewhere, the better we'll go. And, you know, kind of related to that, and put whatever religion you have in your head right now, God is like IKEA. It shows up, but you have to still do the assembly. And to me, that fits every religion I could think of. And the people who misinterpret various parts of Christianity that say that, you know, you're just supposed to let go and let God, is what they say.
Yeah.
That's talking about the biggest part of the picture. You still have to do the work. It makes me think of that really horrendous old joke about the guy who's, you know, the floodwaters have started to rise. Yeah, on the roof. I sent you with this, and this, and this. How come you didn't? Yeah. So anyway, that's my perspective. Is you do have to act for you, or you're doomed. So no matter which of the religions you decide is the best one.
Yeah, and I think that's important in respect of, well, you know, God gave us brains. The idea is to use them.
Yes.
You just can't get by basically being a stump, for lack of a better word. So go way, way back.
Mm-hmm.
What did you want to be when you were a kid?
Writer, ever since I was really little. I thought I was going to write Batman comics for a living. I'm a little off on that by a few. I'm still available, DC Comics.
Yeah.
Just you should know. But you know, I always wanted to write, and you know, I had a lot of other ideas along the way. I would probably be a movie star or something. Close. I'm on your show. That's a good start. I heard that some people have been discovered here, so I think that's a good start. And you know, I've always wanted to do some kind of mix of entertaining and educating. So people sometimes say they never had a clue who they wanted to be when they grew up, but I've always known who I wanted to be. I just didn't think it was true. I didn't think I could.
Yeah.
So
that's a really good distinction, though, because I think if you have that seed of where you want to go, it's much more likely to become, because the seed is something that sustains you and keeps you going. Whether you believe it or not, just having that seed absolutely gives you direction. And I truly believe that.
I'll buy that. I like that perspective, Elaine. I think that, you know, starting somewhere in our heads is a great, you know, a lot of times people will say to me these weird things like, you know, nothing's really working, I'm not really succeeding. And I'll say, what are you trying to succeed at? And then there's a pause. And it's like saying, you know, I have this GPS and it doesn't work. I haven't put any coordinates in and it hasn't really told me where to go.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. And sometimes, well, as you said, the fear is often what makes people flounder, because we are all filled with fear. And you know, even when I was just turning 54, I mean, I'm going to be 59 in November, I got into social media, and there was a huge fear early on that, oh my God, like, I'm so much older than everybody else. How am I going to fit in? Mm-hmm. And then my freak took over and said, I don't have to fit in. I'm just going to do my thing.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. I truly do love it. So having that seed, that would color everything you then did to some extent.
Sure. You know, it's what I love to say when people ask me about my career is I love to say it looks so much better in reverse than it is going forward.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
What did working at a nursing home have to do with, you know, working for a grocery store? What did that have to do with, you know, selling books? You know, because I've always loved books, I guess. That one's easy. What, you know, why did you think it would be great to be a temp worker for a while and end up in places like an aluminum extrusion company where they make the parts that they use to make like sliding doors and things? Why did you think that was ever going to be neat? You know, but all of it taught me something. I mean, I learned all along the way, and I think that everyone who doesn't realize that being a student and a servant are the two best jobs in the universe are the ones who end up wondering why the universe hates them.
That's true. That's true. So yeah, and those are very different jobs, but I'll bet there were very different lessons taken from those jobs. You know, when you're as a support worker, you are working with other people all the time. There's not that one removed, like with the aluminum extrusions. There's sort of a one removed there. You're not necessarily interacting with people, but
Right.
on the level of, you know, support worker, was that in a like old age home or?
Yeah, I worked in a nursing home. There was primarily a bunch of elderly types, and there were also some head injury patients and whatnot. So it was a very interesting experience. And
Oh,
I went there to try to better understand the elderly because my grandfather on my mom's side wasn't exactly the nicest guy, and I was trying to figure out what did I not figure out, like what didn't I understand. So it seemed like a good place to do that. Ultimately, I didn't understand anything about him, but I understood that I really liked old people, and you know that it was interesting how families who would watch their family member deteriorate would come in and look with sorrow and misery on the state of how this person had become. And I didn't know the guy from anybody, so to me he was just buckaroo, and we'd have fun and we'd laugh and we had a good old time. And I guess that's the biggest lesson I got from that was that, you know, there's such a value inside of everybody, and even in ourselves. As we decay, we're all going there. I mean, turns out no one goes the other direction as far as I can tell. You know, we're all going to meet our maker some way or another, and I just think that it's great to celebrate wherever we are in that path.
oh, absolutely, and part of that too, I think, for me, it's living in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were times in my life where I didn't get to be in control, and that made it even that more refreshing by watching what was around me and seeing what was happening or where I was working or what have you, and realizing that, wow, you know, I just need to be present right here, right now. Because if you're constantly looking into the future or constantly, you know, mourning the past, you miss so much. You know, there's so many little moments in our lives. Uh,
Agreed.
when you and I first met, I mean, we had talked a couple of times with other people in Hangouts, but the first time that stuck out for me was the gentleman who was not sure of where he could go or what he could do because he felt he had certain health limitations. And it just struck me how very kind you were in speaking to him. And it was just such a really lovely conversation for everybody. And I know it, like every other time, I dive in and talk too, because that's obviously what I do.
That's what you're supposed to do. You're the second most curious woman in the world. I mean, that's a
There you go.
requirement.
Yeah. So, first book in. Well, you actually, let me back up one second there. You've actually been blogging since 1998,
I'm
or
afraid so.
journaling, right? Yeah.
Back when they called it journaling, yep. It seemed like a good idea, and the thought I had when I started was just that I was writing a lot of fiction, and I couldn't really get it published anywhere, and it couldn't get it published anywhere because it's probably horrible, and also I just wasn't reading the guidelines very well in the magazines, and the magazines didn't know what to do with me because there weren't blogs or anything like that.
Yeah.
Now I'm giggling because not only would we just all publish it ourselves, but there's a ton of magazines that would publish fictional material out there now. Now there's endless places to publish and not enough eyeballs to go around. So it's changed a little.
Yeah, definitely. So all the fiction that you wrote, do you see yourself sort of maybe going back to that in the future, or, you know, heading down that, dare I say, Batman path down in the future?
So I still think that, you know, it's interesting. I have a comic book idea or two in me, definitely for Batman, because I always wondered, like, I know he likes to get into it himself and he's got this vengeance issue because somebody killed his parents, but for a billionaire, it seems like really wasteful for him to drive around and punch everybody one at a time. Like, he could buy an army. He could get just like a whole army of, I don't even know, robots or something to go in and punch all the bad guys for him. and he could just control it. And I guess it's just not as satisfying. I don't know. I was thinking about that. He's really not an especially tactician of a guy. If
No,
he's
no, there's no strategy there.
No, not if he's, I have to go hit all these people. I'll be right back.
Yeah, yeah,
It's going to take me
just
about a
hang on.
month.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Let me just zip
I'd
off.
like to write one as if, somebody tried it. They wrote this thing called Batman Incorporated, and they wrote a bunch of different Batman characters, like all these different people who took up the mantle. Except it was like a bunch of solo acts punching people one at a time. And I just thought, for all this money, we could just clean up Gotham, I guess. But evidently I don't know what I'm talking about. So I don't know. Would I write fiction? Yes. I have another idea too, which is maybe like a science fiction kind of a book. I grew up reading a lot of sci-fi because I think the people who did or do, there's two things. One, we're trying to escape, and the other is we're trying to try to make better sense of things in the world that seem silly to us. So we just rewrite the world to fit that view for a little while so that we could get a different perspective or a little bit of relief.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I know that from the sci-fi perspective, there's such a wide swath of science fiction, some that's very close to where we are now, and some that's so far out there. I really enjoyed it too as growing up. Anything sci-fi, some fantasy, any of the it took me out of myself. I really enjoyed those kinds of books, and then in a weird way, I also enjoy crime dramas and Anne Rule kind of what happened at the scene. So sort of an odd two there. What about your son? How does he feel about Batman?
I never pushed my particular need for certain heroes on my children, so I've let them have their own opinions. We had one big argument in the house, which is that they both liked Jar Jar Binks
Oh dear.
and I said, that's not allowed. You're going to have to go live with your mom because that's not okay. And then, the other stuff that went on was just that I took my daughter to see some of the movies like the X-Men movies and Captain America, and she just has a very different perspective because she hasn't read all those comics, and now all the kids read all the manga comics, all the Japanese comics, and so I'm just not cool enough. She's into all these things that are really complicated storylines. Oh, well, let me give you one quick example, and I know our time is kind of coming to an end, but this one little example is that my daughter says, "Hey, Dad, let me see if I can explain World War II to you." And I was like, okay.
Wow.
She says, Poland was kind of, the first situation. Germany kind of gets involved with Poland and really just beats it up. And all of a sudden this happens. And then he kind of works with Italy and I think Japan. And she starts explaining World War II to me. And I was just like,
wow.
That's like a fairly nuanced, relationship-minded version of the story. And I was like, wow, where did you get this? She goes, oh, I watched this anime called Hetalia, where all the characters, there's a character called Italy, and there's a character called Japan, and all that, and they, are personifications of how those entities were perceived in the war, at least from this organization's perspective.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, like, you know more about World War II than most kids from watching a cartoon. That opened my eyes.
Yeah, yeah. And as much as I thought that the manga stuff was, I mean, it's horrifically violent, a lot of it, and just to me, some of it quite appalling. But the fact is, they do learn. And I have what I call my glam daughter is 20. And yeah, she likes a lot of that anime, and the very complex ideas and scenarios that they pull from reading these just blew my mind because I don't remember that as a kid. I read a few comics and because I like superheroes, but to me they were just it was what it was. Maybe I'm just not that imaginative or didn't extrapolate it all that far. They were just superheroes and heroes and yay go.
That's how I experienced it too. I mean, if the Hulk, I never really understood the Hulk was this thing that explained how we feel powerless and we all wish we had something that could wipe it all out. I just thought it was a man who turned green when he got mad.
Yeah.
So I'm with you, Elaine.
Yeah, I always wondered, like, who the hell paid for the new clothes?
It's a very important point. And why couldn't they just give them stretchy spandex clothes?
Well, yeah, yeah, and well, back then we didn't really have spandex
That's a good point.
first
That's a
start.
very good point.
But I thought, or couldn't somebody, one of his friends, follow him around with another set?
That's right. Or a little backpack.
That was good. Yeah, a little backpack with long straps. Anyway, back to Freaks.
Mm-hmm.
I know the audiobook is coming very soon.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm waiting with bated breath, just so you know. What's next on the horizon for you?
Besides the audiobook for Freaks, what's coming after that is not sure the title, but something that would be a little bit down the path of what I'm doing with the Owner's work, like Owner Magazine and all that. And that'll be sort of the bridge between Freaks and Owners, which is how do you adopt a certain mindset, and how do you, it's very much like a personal development book. This is being much bigger than my bridges, but it would be like saying kind of a more modern Tony Robbins type of experience. I grew up loving his books. He and I did a DVD together back in 2010 or something. I really like the man, and I think he's fascinating. And I just think that I have my own thoughts on some of that stuff, and I would love to share them. And so I will make my own take on that, and I think it'll be differently angled for a different generation. And I have a sense that we'll be able to appreciate both.
Yeah, absolutely. And there can't just be one.
No.
One guru or one expert, because we all have different slants on different pieces of the puzzle.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, so I will. I'm an unashamed advocate for you and of you. I just think you're great. I'll read whatever you put out, but the one you just let go today, which is health and physical. What's the name, and where can people find that?
Or at present, and it's called Just Start Here, and it's you can go to, it's a little tough to just blurt it, but it's cbrogan.me/start here, and you can find it, or just go to Kindle and type, Amazon, and type in Just Start Here. And it's again, it's about fitness and nutrition and all that, but most importantly the mindset that would put you on the better path, instead of, I could tell you which exercises to do. This is kind of how you're going to actually make the choice to do them.
Yeah, and the fact is, for all the exercises and nutrition in the world, if you don't deal with your mindset first and you don't deal with the internal, then you're never going to affect the external.
Exactly. We agree.
Yeah, I'll make sure that those links are available on Business Banter Plus TV, as well as the links to The Freak Shall Inherit the Earth and a number of Chris's other books as well, because I think they're great, and I think everybody should read them. Anthony Robbins says you're great, so what a wonderful feeling for you. I know when one of my mentors or one of my heroes, heaven forbid, they had something good to say about you, it's like, wow. So it must be a real confirmation for you that you're absolutely on that right path.
I'm trying to think of any other way to say it, but I've just been very blessed. I've had the chance to speak to most all of the idols of mine that are still living. So I talked to Richard Branson. I interviewed him for an article for Success magazine, and that made me so happy. Tony Robbins, like I said, brought me to his house to shoot a video, so that was a little different than just meeting him somewhere. I sat in his living room, so I feel pretty good about that. I was trying to think really fast, like, who else do I need to meet? I mean, I'm thrilled. Tom Peters is one of my legends. I got to have lunch with him at an event. Friends like Seth Godin exist. There's just, I'm a lucky man. But I also, as really exciting as all those things are, the best thing in my life is hanging out with people like the second most curious woman in the world. I think that's the icing. The other part, it just comes and goes. It's like you can't eat sugar all day. You need the best things. So thank you for being here as well.
Oh, thank you so much. And see, that's why I love this guy. You just you just radiate. For anybody who still thinks Chris Brogan is just social media, I hope this completely dispels any of that for you. You are so much more than that, and so well-rounded, and have such really deep but actionable things to say. And in your books, it's really very digestible for people. If you follow what's suggested, if you look at yourself and deal with your mindset and all of that, I really think that you're laying out a really good foundation for people to get on that track, especially the freaks that are out there. So I want to say thank you so much for spending time with me. Just a fabulous talk. I could not have asked for anything more. Thanks, everybody. It's Elaine Lindsay of Business Banner Plus TV, and today we were talking with Chris Brogan. I'll see you next time, and it's been awesome.